how to communicate with them in the best way possible. And I couldn't really think of anyone better who's the storyteller that I got to know about than Ashraf Helal, who's the leadership coaching consultant. Please give a round of applause.
شكرا مو. Thank you very much. Well, لو حلفت لكم ان انا I didn't agree with سامر about my presentation we haven't lobbied مش هتصدقوا بس انا قاعد وانا بسمعه عمال اقول يعني احنا الناس هتفتكر ان احنا متفقين على حاجات so thank you very much. Thank you for paving the road for me. كان نفسي ان التوك دي تبقى كلها بالعربي واتكلمت مع نزاد على الكلام ده لان for me in the essence and the core of coaching الكوتشنج خدمة لازم تتقدم دافئة وقريبة من القلب وحاسس ان احنا يعني واحنا في مصر الجاب الحقيقية في الناس اللي محتاجة يتنقل لها الكلام ده بالعربي لكن we are where we are it's an international type of summit that said أنا هو ده بس وأنا أصغر حوالي 6 سنين بس أنا لما بكبر بصغر I'm much better now. I come from a leadership background and I'm proud of that. I'm 51 years old this month actually, and I spend 50% of my time in corporates. And I'm one big fan of corporates. I'm not the person who talks about toxic corporate environment and that type of things. I love corporate. I learned everything I needed to learn in corporate. But I had to shift at a point of time, and that was an overlapping shift. So I shifted in 2013 but without leaving corporate, to doing both things together, which is coaching and leadership transformation. And that was very important to me because it meant externally that I'm doing an executive job in one of the organizations and doing a coaching job in the afternoons and evenings and weekends, and then like emptying my life for only doing coaching and leadership transformation. But internally, it meant to me I've been working for 50% of my life on designing life and tuning life and developing life to fit for people. That's what I used to do in corporate. Now, and as this is very challenging, which is tuning life, so I decided to move into helping people and developing people to fit for life. So externally it's another job, but internally it was a very different perspective for me in my life. And that's why the leadership coaching topic is very dear to me. And as usual, for anyone who heard me before, it's very hard for me to relate the topic I'm talking about to what I say inside. So أنا رغاية الغبرة. So I usually, and I love philosophy and I love anthropology and I love those type of sciences. So help me and direct me and guide me as coaches when I go. So my agenda is, if that's a master class for leadership coaching. So I thought about my journey and I reflected while preparing this, and I thought, yes, I did have 3 obstacles in the beginning to move to a leadership coach from a leader. And I did pass by 3 milestones, actually much more, but I brought 3 here for like, it's a media thing. And I had 3 supplements that I've been working on, I've been adding, and I'm not even midway yet. So I'll take this, I'll steal it from Samir. I'm not saying I'm not perfect, no, I'm perfect, but I'm perfect as I am. But what I'm saying today is not perfect. It's not a prescription. It's not something that you go and apply for leadership coaching. It's just my journey. And my journey, you might actually agree on it. You might agree on some and you don't like some other thing. And actually, you can tell me, no, I have a very different approach to that. And I would love that because not because I'm just humble, but because I knew it in the hard way that I already have some other opposing ideas to what I say. So I'm just on the way. And I'm sharing my journey as I go with it. So one by one, the 3 obstacles I faced was 1, my ego trap. I'm not talking about someone I'm coaching or someone I'm teaching today, it's me. I came with a lot of chains. I came with a lot of chains. out of corporate, although I've been working on myself, I've been developing myself, I've been I've been doing the introspection work, I've been coached for years, but I come with change due to like the context and what I come from. So I arrived to coaching rooms and started to learn about coaching with that very important label of I know. And because I knew, I was accused of being a good leader and a good mentor. And so I know things. I know things, and it's not only that I know them and I share them, it's actually, I have a proven history of success because of what I know. So I know, and I teach because I was a mentor and I was taught to be a mentor. And I perform, and that was my biggest ego trap. So I'm used to performing. I'm type 3, I'm image focused, I'm a success person, I relate to success, so I need to perform and I need to shine. And why that was an obstacle with the coaching, because with time, probably a lot of people here in the room already discovered that, but for the people who's coming, I try to make you much more pessimistic about finding performance and shining in coaching. Not only the profession of coaching does not fit that shining aspiration, but also I believe in myself that shining and trying to perform defeats coaching and kills coaching at its core. So I was requested to do a job that I won't be trying to shine, and actually trying to perform well is not good. I needed to unlearn a lot. So ego traps was one of the biggest obstacles. So I arrived to rooms, but I didn't really arrive. And until in one day, I had a coach for me, because I've been having a coach for a long time, and I dealt with all coaches in corporate and out of corporate, NLP coaches, ICF coaches, presentation and media coaches, and some other coaches from different, there's a lot of professions that call themselves coaching. So, but this coach helped me a lot to think and build an intention of what I'm going to do, and think in a bigger way. So he asked me whenever I want to talk, because I love talking, to stop and pause for 30 seconds first and think, what's my intention of what I'm going to say? And if I'm happy with the intention, I continue. If I'm not happy, I don't continue. And if I have doubts, I just stay silent. And accordingly, 70% of what I've used to say, I stopped saying since then. Not always. Sometimes I start talking again because it's my nature and it's one of my imperfections, but I know that at least. Second obstacle was reactive design. And reactive design, I'm sure you know a bit of that. Why I call it a design? Because we've been created with that design. It's about protecting ourselves in different styles. So mostly when people try to protect themselves, they try to comply, please people, obey rules, go with the flow, or protect and make a distance between themselves and others, and this translates into different shapes. You can see it in different versions, or controlling, and that's the sexiest one, and that's why it's my favorite style. The controlling, that was my biggest reactive tendency. Why I love it? Because controlling comes in the shape of ambition, drive, high standards, perfectionism, and saying and telling and being knowledgeable. So it looks very nice. And I used it heavily. It was my life. So the reactive design just came in the way, and especially controlling, came in the way between me and coaching specifically, because in coaching, controlling, actually, you know it, you cannot control things. You cannot be very ambitious with a client. You cannot have this drive and passion. So I needed to tune down and lower the volume of my passion and my ambition and my drive, and connect more to things that I'm going to tell you in the milestones about. Labels. I arrived to executive coaching in particular. So I'll tell you about the journey. I started with life coaching, executive coaching, and then something called deep transformational coaching. And I studied also something not related to coaching, like positive psychology, leadership transformation, and other stuff. So when I started in life coaching, I was over the moon. I started to learn how to like tone down my control tendencies, my reactive tendencies. But when I arrived to executive coaching, although I was already doing some executive coaching for years before that, because I was an executive myself, and that's very attractive to organizations. They don't care about the title. I highly relate to what you said, Magda, which is, it's not like life coaching, executive coaching, sports coaching, relationship coaching. It's coaching. Life coaching, anything that relates to life coaching. Okay? So if my job is part of my life, isn't it? Then it's life coaching. And I actually, while I was doing executive coaching, I never felt unlocked and this encounter is going in a healthy way until I reach a moment where the person starts to tell me, I'm not feeling good, or something about home. Before that, I'm not coaching yet. If I'm still talking about strategy and business goals and the grow model, I'm not there. It can be a good coaching, but I'm not there. So there is a life coaching aspect here. And when I arrived to the executive coaching room, I found I was in a circle, and I was sitting in the middle of a circle, and I was the only executive there, like I was still in my job. And that's very common now, that you find executives and HRDs attending coaching, but it wasn't popular. So I found everyone, like firsthand hearing them telling me things about executives. They didn't know me, but executive is, a leader is. They don't have time, they're very efficient, they have big drive, they're pragmatic, they need numbers, they need ROIs. And I was like taking that and trying to reflect on myself. I didn't have zero of that. I'm just a human who was very scared in the room, trying to mask my imperfection, and trying to look like an executive, which is a burden, and trying to act in my organization and out like an executive. And actually, because I have that natural tendency of being playful, so I was always coached on that, like how do I look like? So labels come in the way. A leader is having something in mind about what is a leader. The biases come on the way. The biases like a man and a woman and things that we see on media, and age bias. And it's not because we're humans, and I believe we'll never get rid of biases. I believe that the best thing we can do is just being aware of I have biases. I still have biases. I enjoy them, and I embrace them rather than trying to suppress them. And the briefings, especially in leadership and executive coaching, it's a contract between three parties, not two. So when I'm teaching or coaching or helping someone doing anything for Mountain View, for example, I'll be talking to Russia and the person and my coachee. And that's a very sensitive contract because you usually start with briefing. And briefing is the HR or the person opinion about this person. And you cannot reject it, you cannot deny it. But I advise you not to be very impacted or affected with it. I was lucky to study that research thoroughly about the Pygmalion effect and the expectations you put on people and how you get from them. And that was like more than 40 years of research in a mega study that proved again and again and again in armies, in organizations, in companies, in schools, in parenting, that what you expect from people impact those people's behavior. So that's a very big responsibility for a leadership coach or an executive coach to handle, which is balancing between the organization objectives, the organization briefing, and the person you're going to meet. So if you go already with a bag of, I know Sam is very calm, he's introvert, he doesn't talk to people, he needs to improve his communication, and I have this in mind, that's a big label. So that might come as an obstacle in the health of the encounter with someone you're coaching. Let's move to the positive side. Milestones. How did I overcome those obstacles, if any? I'm not sure I already overcame them all. So number one is pausing. I needed to pause. I was very fast. And I have always this metaphor. I was like a car that is moving on 230 kilometers per hour speed. And that looks like, in a corporate life and a very, from leadership point of view, like very fast. And fast means achieving faster. No, it doesn't. Because fast made me lose a lot of shortcuts and a lot of joy seeing the flowers and the trees on the side. So I learned to be mindful. I learned to pause through mindfulness. I learned to pause through an intention. So I learned to set an intention to whatever I'm going to do. Even talking to my kids, and I can call them kids. I have 24, 22, 16, 12, and 10. So none of them is a kid anymore. Even the 10 one is not a kid. But talking to them with an intention is very different from talking to them without an intention. So before coaching, I need to have an intention. Before learning something, I need to have an intention. Just know it, just as my coach told me about before I speak. And curiosity. Curiosity is humbling for me. And I loved it. Yani, that's the part that I accepted first from coaching, because that was the gateway for the coaching to enter my system. Because I love that. I'm an explorer too. I remember the best games I used to play while I was a kid is like putting things on things and trying things and things, even a nail in the electricity thing, and I got shocked and a lot of things about exploring here. So curiosity for me was the main gateway to pause. So just staying curious with things. Milestone number 2 is empty. And I love that because probably in the third module of my learning, I had this message to share again and again, and I kept repeating it. Guys, I'm not learning anything. I'm just unlearning a lot of things. So I came with with a lot and heavy knowledge, and I'm just like emptying things, getting to doubt and question everything I know. So number 1 I needed to empty is the habit of doing. And if you know me, I was one of those human doings, not human beings. So I connect with task lists when I need to call my mom, because that's a very important thing for me to do. I put her on a task list, otherwise I might forget. So I was a human doing, so I empty myself from doing so that I create a space for something else. I empty myself from knowledge, not that I get rid of the knowledge or like erase them, but just open the pot and stay open for that to be replaced. And I empty myself of my beliefs, not again that I can get rid of my beliefs, but because as in the sort of on the way of like again questioning things. So an advanced metaphor of that would be for me like being a space at the end. Not that I'm there, but at least having flexible opinion about what you know. So I started at this phase of emptying to get much more flexible with things I believe they are wrong. I started to use the word wrong less. And I started to be much more open to things that are not at all like me. I can make the distance, but I just open the space for things to happen. And that's very important for leadership coaching specifically. And why leadership coaching? Because the coming thing. Because the third milestone for me was fill. So empty and then fill. And what do I fill myself with? Is new kind of learning. So I used to know a lot of models. I used to know a lot of techniques I used in mentoring. I used to know even a lot of that social media stuff of how I connect to someone who's sitting, how I talk to people in a room, how I make sure that everybody feels I'm talking specifically to him, how I look like and how I walk. That was doing. Just empty some of that and create a space of being. So I started to learn things like how I sit when I sit for myself, how I put my feet on the ground, and how I breathe, and how I listen. So habits of being, how I be present. Presence and space. And space for me is a kind of a very, very, this word relates to coaching. If you ask me about coaching in one word for coaching, I would say either presence or space. So because space, I believe, is what's needed most in a very crowded world. We have less space and more of everything else. But this doesn't go without repeat. And by repeat, I mean you cannot just once go to a training, empty, and then fill, and that's it. Because you'll end up again in the very first situation you were in. You need to repeat that. You need to keep yourself. Don't close your pot again. So once you opened it, just keep it open. I'm not sure what I will see, what will enter, and what will go out. But just have the courage and trust to keep it open. Supplements, because I go to gym and I'm 51 years old, so I need some supplements in order to at least stay in shape, not to grow. So these were the supplements of me moving in the journey of from a leader to a coach or a leadership coach. I discovered after probably 1,000 hours of coaching leaders that knowing is not a good thing in coaching. It's not only not an important thing, but it's not a good thing. So as much as I know, although people choose Ashraf because Ashraf used to be an executive with that title and he's coming from the real life, ضابط من تحت السلاح يعني مش جاي ينظر علينا, so I'm not jumping out of a textbook or out of a training class. That was a very good reason commercially for people to choose me. But the more I know and I use my knowledge in a coaching wasn't very beneficial, by the way. Because it's not about me. That puts me back into the performance thing. Just when I connect to people with the not knowing, believe it or not, that's what's really rare in life. Ask anyone in any metro ولا في الشارع about an advice and he will tell you. Even a medical advice. We're overwhelmed with knowledge. We are flooded with information. The thing that a leader or an executive miss is some space. I need to meet someone who doesn't know. So that we have a space and we can fill it together. So selling knowing versus not knowing was a key thing to me. And by the way, this doesn't mean that this applies to leadership coaching as a best practice and you can go and try it into حرين. I don't give any promise here. This just worked for me and for people who choose me after a chemistry session. And some people don't. Some people believe that's a crazy thing to breathe them on or having this energy, but I choose what I am. Telling versus listening. Again, you can tell a lot of people a lot of things to do, and that I'm not underestimating telling, by the way, because telling is part of services that is very respectable and they help a lot, as Magda said, when they are needed, like training, mentoring, helping people. For me, the coaching is mainly, I'm thinking because that was part of the next slide, but it came now. For me, coaching is that the main difference between coaching and any other human service is not what's written on the internet. It's not like looking in the past versus present to future. All that is good and applies. But the main difference in coaching than therapy, mentoring, training, medicine, engineering is that's the only seat I found that's really humble. It does not come to you with a rank. So if I'm a mentor, I'm coming to tell you part of my experience. If I'm a trainer, I'm going to tell you something that you don't know. If I'm a therapist, I'm going to fix you. As a coach, no, I'm not coming from there. I don't have a rank at you. Actually, you probably have the rank. But the balanced relationship looks like this. And that's very humble because on one hand, it empowers people. I don't have sympathy. I don't try to save them. I don't do that. But at the same time, it removes a lot of burden. That's a personal benefit. So I'm not responsible for doing things. That's why I believe, and I still believe, even with the advancement and development we see and the increasing number of interest in leadership and executive coaching, still executive coaching and leadership coaching is part of an advanced culture. So it needs courage and risk and belief from people who take that. Because although we have research, we have numbers, it's proven scientifically and statistically that you can make an ROI, and I don't promise that to a person. It's a co-responsibility, and people in HRDs and CEOs need to know that. So we have a risk together. And last, showing, not seeing, and Samer covered that, so I'm not going there. So it's showing rather than showing people what to do, but also seeing people is very important. So seeing people, they have enough of visuals that they saw in the day, and they have a lot of presentation and numbers and slides they saw. Now it's time when you meet someone, especially an executive, to see them and see them really. Like, be with them. Because what they've been lacking in the day, in my experience, was being seen as humans. Second supplement is purpose. I made that a lot of times, like working with executives and leaders on their goals and the organization goals without knowing where I'm heading, or without them knowing. It's not important for me to know, but they need to know where they are heading. And that looks like someone who is lost in the desert and doing all the effort. So you can recognize the effort, actually. I'm running and running and running. And you can clap for him and see that that's something you celebrate, but he's not going nowhere because he doesn't have a compass. So, and then I discovered that whatever the goal is, I need to connect the client to the client purpose. Otherwise, I'm not going anywhere. I can save a lot of effort, and I can do a shortcut, and I can help people be better, not do better, through connecting to a purpose. So that's always my supplement. The thing I always use is connecting people to purpose. And I hear all details, and then the first question I ask after I hear any challenge is not about the challenge. I make that as a rule. It's about the person who's telling me the challenge. And lost is trust. And that was not only a supplement, but like my main calories in coaching came from that. Because I needed some trust, I needed some hope, because this sounds like mad to me. It sounded in the beginning like mad, because that's again a very big challenge of coaching. All what you can explain about coaching is something that you can find in books and trainings, and it's very superficial. But anything other than the 7% is the essence of coaching, and it needs to be trusted from the coach who's moving to be a good coach, and from the client as well. But this builds up bit by bit. So trusting the process was very important to me. It's like I decided at one point of time not to analyze, because one of my main basic competencies was analytical skills and critical thinking, and that I was managing a big budget. I needed to have that. But just trusting the process, like playing with it, exploring, trusting the client. And again, with all due respect to feedback and briefing from HR, you need to trust your client. If you don't trust your client, don't work with him. It's better for you and him. And you need to have a genuine trust. And in our school, we call it holistic trust. You don't have to trust the person because that person is 1, 2, 3. You need to have a holistic trust in the system. It's perfect as is. Because if you don't trust this person, it looks like you're standing in a big picture and you're looking at a special color in one of the lines, and you're like too much rejecting this color. But if you step back, he's perfectly fine. And I agree with Robert when he said nothing is, there's no uncoachable. Although we say it a lot in schools, by the way, because we teach people where to send people to therapy and where to don't continue here. But I don't believe there's something is called uncoachable. Anyone who you meet, you might succeed with him, which is coaching, and you might fail, which is coaching too. So failure at coaching is success because it's a new piece of information you can get curious about. You learn something, and it's just one step in the person's journey and your journey as a coach. So trusting the client and trusting your intuition. And I needed to tone that a little bit down because I used to process a lot and analyze people and أفهمها وهي طايرة, and I called this intuition. Then it took me some time to unlearn, then learn what intuition is and how to be connected without processing and without using my my knowledge here. And that's it for me. So I know maybe I needed to recap from like a presentation point of view. So 3 obstacles, 3 milestones, and 3 supplements. Ego traps, reactive design, knowledge, knowing a lot. That's not needed. If you have it, it will work for you somewhere else. Performance and shining is not the best thing. This is not the best place to find it. So make sure you have another job that makes you shine if you want it. So that you keep the coaching pure. And the milestones were empty, fill, pause, empty, fill, and repeat. And the supplements were حد فاكرهم? What are the supplements? أنا بسأل عشان أنا مش فاكرهم مش عشان أنا بختبركم. Trust, humbleness, purpose. Thank you very much. I'm open for questions لو في وقت ولو سمحت لي نزادة ولو عندنا questions.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for your lovely presentation. I was just wondering if you ever had any second thoughts starting out your journey in coaching. Because it's kind of the same situation with a lot of us who are trying to jump or shift one of their careers to another career of coaching. So I was just asking about your experience with it.
Thank you very much for the question. اسم حضرتك ايه؟
أحمد جلال.
شكرا أحمد. بص يا أحمد, wearing my other hat, I teach customer experience and design thinking. So I applied what I know from design thinking to that shift. So I started learning coaching in 2013. I started coaching in 2014, and I kept my job till 2018. So I kept trying, doing prototypes and minimum viable products and putting this to trial and see how do I feel and what might happen in the market because I had 6 kids. So I wouldn't risk like jumping into coaching. Probably if I was much younger or in a different context of life, I would do that. So what I always tell people, if I want to tell them something from a mentoring point of view about my experience, I don't cut ropes. I don't jump from one place to another. I do things. So just try what you're going to do, especially that coaching, like going and meeting someone in one-on-one basis and doing coaching. I never saw it for a family man as something that's very compensating that he can live with, especially if he has a good job. So I know that's very technical, but it always come for me like a very important value-based second job. And I actually advise people to be financially secured away from coaching. It makes it more pure. So what I applied was like gradually moving. I had to work at nights, I had to take some annual leaves and work, and I had to work in my weekends. But that was funny, and like I took it like a leisure time. I loved it until I faced this. I found this blessing of the tipping point of moving from coaching is very tiring, and if I did it after my day, it will add a lot of stress to me, to finally like dealing with coach as a cure. So if I have a very stressful day, I take a coaching session and I move and I go home much lighter. And then I started finding some connections that I can do coaching with. I started to have some affiliations, and then and only then I decided to jump.
Okay, perfect. That brings me to my second question. Do you ever get overwhelmed or kind of heavily influenced by what you face from clients and what they tell you? Because you're starting or you're trying to stick to this point of complete neutrality. So does what they say influence you in any kind of negative way, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, if you mean about the encounter or the relationship with the client himself or herself, I don't agree, at least in my case, about the label of complete neutrality. I'm not that coach who doesn't judge or like completely neutral. I definitely have an opinion and judgment. What I learned is self-managing. And how can I question my opinion? And how can I not it? I make sure it's not part of the play here. Okay? Even sometimes I admit that so that I make sure it gets neutral. So complete neutrality is very ideal to me, and I don't connect to that. Accordingly, I don't get overwhelmed. If you connect to these principles, you don't get overwhelmed unless you feel responsible. And I learned bit by bit not to be very responsible. That does not mean I'm not overwhelmed as we speak now in my life from other aspects. So I didn't master that in life, but in coaching, I believe I'm in a much better shape.
Okay, we have another question.
We have many questions. So I'll leave you, I'll let you manage the traffic. Radwa.
Hi, Ashraf, how are you? I'm Radwa Saad. Thanks for this amazing presentation. For me, it was a philosophy into practice. And I have one question about intuition. You have said that it took you a lot of learning and practices to differentiate between is it really an intuition or is it something else? Can you share a tip or two? How do I get to differentiate?
I don't know.
Okay.
حدس.
Thank you. Thank you.
اسمه حدس.
Someone else.
Okay, we have another question. Thank you, Radu. كوسة وأعرف الراجل بقى.
منتهى الشفافية.
بمنتهى الشفافية. تفضل يا شباب.
Ashraf, first of all, thank you very much. I'm so glad that I caught your session. I just came in late. My name is Mohammed Shahabuddin, and there are a couple of things. First of all, 6 kids, right? Good luck. I mean, really impressive.
But I send the older ones to the parents' meeting, so I'm
Okay,
delegating.
that's good. That's good. It's good to have a succession plan. And I want to build on a couple of things, and I want to salute you for the mix of very pragmatic and very honest and very practical approach of how you're looking at things. This is really good because you tend to listen a lot to a lot of theoretical goody stuff where, like, the peaceful thing, and it's just the internal dialogue is good. Sorry for taking that long, but it was refreshing. My question for you is about the moral obligations, the moral responsibility, the moral burden. It might relate a little bit to the earlier question from the gentleman, but I'm talking here about you, not only about your mental health or well-being, but I'm talking about that moment when you realize that your client, the person sitting in front of you, regardless of how clear you were about the trust issues and about the boundaries and about who you are and who you're not, when at that moment they look at you and whatever you say right now, even the simple question, is actually going to affect their life. And you know that because you know how much they trust you. And there's this moment of moral responsibility, but should I or should not? And then 5 minutes later, should I have or not? And then whatever happens later on, what the hell did I just do?
Shukran.
Yeah, and I'm asking this from a very practical moment. I had to fire a big fat client because I realized that whatever I'm going to do with that person is going to empower him, is going to be really good at what they do, and what they do is not compatible with my values.
Thank you, Shahab.
Thank you.
A question that
أشرف اعرف إن أنت ليك الحقية إن أنت ما تردش ده موضوع
بالظبط إلا في حضور المحامي
عادي جدا أنا واقف عنك هنا ما تقلقش.
Okay. I have two answers here and they come from probably I believe they speak to what you really ask. And correct me if I'm wrong. Number one, I'll take it again, I'll see it again from Samir. I sense a lot, I hear a lot this moral responsibility and responsibility in the essence of what you say. And I'll use here a word that I used to hear from my mentor is ما تستقواش نفسك. You're not that important. You're not that important in people's lives. So question, what meaning do you give to this moral responsibility? probably for me it used to come from ego. It's like I'm very important, but I don't say that. But my question will impact their life. What if I open the trauma and I can't close it? The very famous questions of coaching. You're not that strong. Okay. People at the end of the day will choose how things will land on them, and they will choose what to do with it. So that's number one. And number two is actually an alarm here. I have a high IQ. And I'm a good investigator. أنفع وكيل نيابة يعني. So in the beginning of my coaching journey, I used to be like thinking that's very smart to talk to people and trying to find the impact of me on them and them. And then I discovered after a few steps that that's staying in my what we call level 1, staying in my downloading phase. I'm not listening to what they say. So for me, I'm not sure about you, but for me, I cannot help it being in this phase of questioning my impact and being present. I have to choose either or. So I let go of these questions and I stay present and I trust the process. I hope this answers the question.
Thank you. We have 2 more questions to come. Samir and then Ms. Hiba.
Second, what I would like to ask you, since you repeated things that we share in terms of philosophy and leadership, what kind of resistance do you usually see within the decision maker of organizations to this philosophy? Where did you find it the most?
Samir, I'm very politically savvy. So they can't put their hands on what you just heard. They wouldn't find it in what I do. I talk ROI, I talk contracting, I talk about logistics, I make sure everything is. But smart people sense it. And they sense it in the way that when an HR person asks me, and probably some people in the room, I have that experience with them, what would you do? What can you help? How can you help my executive? How would I measure the success of your work? And the first question I ask, what success would look like to you? And that's an amazing point. Because you usually help them see the person. You started coaching the person without seeing him. Because you started like supporting him with the surrounding. How do I see him? What would success look like? And you end up like doing some ripple effect in the organization. So number one, people don't hear me talk about philosophy as I do on stage here, of course, in corporates, but I never hide it. So it comes in this way. So I enjoy that seat of, that's what I do, and I don't have anything to do more. And so I don't face, in this case, I don't face pressures, but I face rejections. And like 50% of my contracts don't continue. Yes, after chemistry sessions, sometimes I'm happy with the other 50%. Not مش تناكة والله, but يعني I'm just being, that's what I do. Not that there are some other coaches who do great, but أنا بعمل الشغلانة دي because I love it, not because I want to do great. And I do great.
Thank you,
because of that.
Ashraf, can we do 2 for the price of 1?
اللي انت عاوزه, انت اللي بتمانج الترافيك.
Okay, so we take 1 here, 1 there, answer both.
Okay.
And be concise as much as possible.
Hard.
طيب, I cannot help كده, بس يعني since you said you're politically savvy, بس برضو I have to pressure you a little bit, seeing the infographics. يعني tackling the leadership and executive line of people in charge, يعني, we can see that females are actually taking a big portion now. Can you give us some insight? How do you see the coaching of females versus males in this area?
I love it.
You have to answer this, okay? Don't go political, please, okay? I want to know because we're always...
شكله political.
أيوة, برافو عليك, بالظبط. And because we're seeing a lot of this in the market now,
yes.
And always females are being compared, especially the ones who are in leadership positions.
Yes.
How do they perceive the coaching and how do they implement it? Yes. And can you give us some برضو infographics, the figures or the numbers who approach you?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much. Don't answer. Think about the answer. Don't answer.
هجاوب.
تفضل. Yeah.
Hi, Ashraf.
هاي
أنا لينا.
انا مش ايه مين؟
لينا.
نينا؟
لينا يا أشرف، لينا.
هاي لينا.
Hi يا أشرف. Away from the normal questions, I want to ask you as a human, as a person, what's the happiest part of your daily routine that you bring into coaching? How could this impact your clients? Thank you.
ثانك يو لينا. هبدأ بسؤال لينا عشان أسهل. مو أجاوب يا مو؟
Yes, sir.
اوكي احلى وقت في يومي the highlight of my day is usually having dinner with my two ladies, identical twins, Sarah and Mariam, 22, at night, where they put dinner, and it's usually late at night, and this يعني made me have this very bad habit of staying late just to connect to them. And this, I believe, as you asked me, this impacts a lot of areas in my life. But that's the highlight of my daily routine, connecting to Sarah and Mariam. 3 years ago, I used to have 70 to 80% of my clients women. I have a little bit more than balanced of feminine energy in me. I was told that. That's why I jumped into coaching and that type of emotional type of work. Now it's like, for me, it's 50-50, or sometimes I believe after COVID, I started to seeing more men. I don't know why. I didn't have that from research point of view yet, but people, when they become vulnerable, sometimes by choice or not by choice, they connect more to emotions and that type of work. Males are, I don't want to put labels, but males in general, or like masculine energy, is pragmatic, more pragmatic, not that connected to self-development, to vulnerability, to being like open to things. So, but after they get coached, they are very loyal customers and fans, clients and fans. That's what I believe. I don't, and that's very personal, don't take it on me. I don't like woman empowerment type of thing. I don't like that, because for me, it has an underlying message of giving more power from. So if someone is giving power to women, who would give it? I don't like the comparison theme, but I like connecting to women. They're more humble, in my experience. Now, that's not statistically valid, but they're more humble, they're more easier to connect to, and they're more willing to open up and accordingly to develop. Does this answer your question, or you still have a missing part? في حتة قولي لي بقى الحتة دي عشان نسيتها. ها؟ بعد السيشن؟
بعد السيشن.
حاضر. Okay. طب does this answer part of your question? So are you أنت مرضية أنزل يعني؟ Thank you very much. I'm sorry هم وقفوا الأسئلة. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Ashraf.